The Wolf Reliquary had ignored kings, devoured liars, and driven false alphas mad with the sound of their own broken oaths. So when the court sent Amara Vale through its bone threshold, they did not expect her to return. They expected silence. That was what scentless girls deserved in Ravengard. No howl, no witness, no wolf memory turning its skull toward her. Amara stood barefoot before the reliquary doors with a silver chain around her throat and a white trial dress clinging to her thin body like frost. Beyond the open arch waited darkness packed with bones. Hundreds of ancient wolf skulls lined the curved walls from floor to ceiling, each one resting in a niche carved from black stone. Their empty eye sockets faced forward. Their teeth shone faintly in the cold moonlight pouring through cracks in the ceiling. No living wolf entered that chamber without kneeling first. Amara had not been allowed to kneel. Kneeling implied the dead might answer. High Oathkeeper Soren stood beside her in robes of ash-white fur, his long silver hair braided with oath beads, his face calm with the kind of certainty that made cruelty look holy. In one hand, he held a bowl of crushed pine, iron dust, and moon salt, the ritual scent mixture given to every true-born wolf before entering the reliquary. In the other, he held nothing for her. That emptiness was the point. In Ravengard, Soren declared to the gathered court, a wolf is known by scent, oath, and ancestral memory. A soul with no scent carries no pack, no blood claim, no place in the old bones. A ripple passed through the nobles. New scent, no place, no wolf. Amara kept her hands still at her sides. They had called her scentless since childhood, not wolfless. That would have been kinder. A wolfless girl could still smell of rain, bloodline, hearth smoke, pine, mother, father, pack. Amara carried nothing. Wolves leaned close to her and recoiled, not because she stank of curse, but because she left no trace at all. A child without scent was not simply unwanted. She was impossible to mourn. No wolf could track her if she vanished. No mate could know her. No ancestral skull would remember her after death. That was what they said. Alpha King Riven Blackthorn watched from the upper steps of the reliquary courtyard, dark cloak moving in the winter wind. He was broad-shouldered and still, with black hair, gold-gray eyes, and a jaw carved by command more than kindness. A crown of wolf bone rested above his brow. His presence pressed on the court like a storm refusing to break. Amara had seen him only from far away before this night. Never this close. Never while the nobles waited for him to let her be swallowed by the dead. Soren lifted his bowl toward the king. Your Majesty, the scentless girl was found near the sealed oath records last moon. She claims she only cleaned the corridor. Amara's throat tightened. She had been cleaning. She had also heard something behind the sealed wall. A low, broken sound like wolves trying to howl through stone. Riven's gaze settled on her. Did you touch the oath records? No. Her voice sounded small beneath the skull-lined arch. Soren smiled faintly. She denies with ease. That is the gift of a scentless creature. No fear, scent. No guilt, scent. No lie, scent. Nothing for honest wolves to read. A few nobles murmured approval. Riven descended one step. If she has no scent, how did your guards claim she was at the sealed wall? Soren's smile did not move. They saw her. Sight can be mistaken. Oaths cannot. The word landed carefully. Too carefully. Riven's eyes narrowed. Amara noticed then what others did not. When Soren spoke of oaths, the ancient skulls inside the reliquary seemed to darken, just for a breath, as if moonlight withdrew from their bones. Then it passed. Maybe fear was making patterns. Maybe not. Soren turned toward the court. Let the Wolf Reliquary decide. If the ancestral skulls ignore her, she has no place among Ravengard's true wolves. If they reject her, she will be stripped of protection and cast beyond the eastern pines before dawn. If the skulls rejected her, her name would be cut from the living oath book before dawn. A scentless girl with no recorded name could be hunted, killed, or forgotten without crime. Amara looked at him. And if they answer, she asked, will you still call silence the law? The courtyard fell silent. Soren's eyes cooled. They will not. The certainty in his voice frightened her more than hatred would have. Riven watched her for a long moment. His face remained unreadable, but his attention was sharp, dangerous. Not pity. She was grateful for that. Pity was only another leash, when held by powerful hands. "Enter," he said. The command cut through her. She hated that her body obeyed before her pride could refuse. Amara stepped over the bone threshold. Cold struck her at once. Not winter cold. Memory cold. The reliquary swallowed the sounds of the courtyard behind her. Her bare feet touched black stone, polished by centuries of alpha kings, Luna queens, oathbreakers, dying witnesses, and wolves who had come to ask the dead if their blood still deserved the moon. The skulls did not move. Of course they did not. A noblewoman laughed softly outside. Amara took another step. Still nothing. Soren's voice carried from the doorway. "You see? The bones no absence." Amara forced herself to keep walking. She would not run from dead things while living ones watched. At the center of the chamber stood the first skull, larger than all the rest, its jaws open around a silver oath chain. Ravengard legend said the first Alpha had sworn his bloodline before that skull, and every king after him had been confirmed by its silence. Silence meant acceptance. Silence meant the old wolves approved. Amara stopped before it. A sound came from inside the wall. Not loud, not a howl, a breath. Her heart struck hard. The first skull turned. Slowly, bones scraped against stone. The court outside went silent. Then another skull turned. Then another. All around the reliquary, hundreds of ancient wolf skulls shifted in their niches, empty eye sockets filling with silver light. One by one, they turned away from the king's oath path and toward Amara. Soren made a sound behind her. Not disbelief. Fear. Riven stepped into the doorway. "Amara," he said, and her name in his mouth sounded less like accusation than warning. The first skull opened its jaws wider. The silver oath chain inside snapped. Then every skull in the reliquary began to chant a name. Not Amara. Something older. Something the kingdom had erased so deeply that even she had never heard it before. Amarin. The chamber shook. Silver light poured from the skull's empty eyes and gathered at her feet, forming a spiral of old wolf tracks around her. High Oathkeeper Soren stumbled back, face white. Riven reached toward her in shock, and from beneath the first skull, a hidden oath stone cracked open, revealing words carved in black moonbone. The First Howl was sealed without consent. Soren took one step back. "That oath stone was buried beneath the first Alpha," he whispered. "No skull should remember it. No skull should remember it." Soren's whisper was not meant for the court. That was why everyone heard it. The Wolf Reliquary held the words in its bone-cold mouth and gave them back to the courtyard with terrible clarity. Nobles drew away from the threshold. Guards tightened their hands around spear shafts. Somewhere behind the outer columns, a woman made a small, frightened sound and covered it too late. Amara stood before the first skull with silver light circling her bare feet. Amarin. The name still moved through the chamber, not loudly now, but under every breath, as if the bones had planted it beneath the stone and waited for her to step close enough to wake it. She did not know that name. She did not remember anyone calling her that. Yet the moment the skulls chanted it, something in her chest ached with recognition. Not scent. Memory. Riven crossed the threshold. Every skull turned slightly toward him. Not bowing. Watching. The Alpha King stopped just inside the reliquary, his gold-gray eyes fixed on the cracked oath stone beneath the first skull. The words carved in black moonbone glowed brighter with each passing breath. The First Howl was sealed without consent. Riven looked at Soren. "You knew this stone existed." Soren's fear vanished behind discipline. It was a swift change, practiced and polished. "I knew old heresies were buried beneath the reliquary. That is why oath keepers exist, Your Majesty, to keep dead madness from confusing living law." Amara almost laughed. It came out as a breath. Soren's eyes snapped toward her. "Do not mistake accident for inheritance." The skulls hissed. The sound was dry, bone over stone. Soren flinched again. Riven saw. So did Amara. The Alpha King stepped deeper into the chamber. The skulls said her name. "The dead repeat what forbidden blood commands them to repeat." "I heard no command." Soren lifted his chin. "Because scentless magic leaves no trail." The court murmured uneasily, relieved to be handed a fear they understood. Amara turned toward him. Her legs trembled, but she forced her voice steady. "A moment ago, you said I had no magic. No blood claim, no place in the bones. Soren's mouth tightened. Now I command the dead? A few nobles looked away. Riven's gaze moved to her, and something sharp and reluctant flickered in it. Not approval. Not yet. But attention, deepening into respect. Soren pointed toward the first skull. This is exactly how old blood deceives. It makes contradiction look like revelation. The oath stone cracked again. A second line appeared beneath the first. The scent was taken before the name. Amara went still. The reliquary darkened around her. Darken, not absent. Not empty. Darken. For years, she had believed there was a missing place inside her where scent should have lived. She had imagined herself born unfinished, a girl the moon had forgotten to mark. She had let the court's disgust teach her how to disappear from rooms, from records, from hope. But the stone said something had been stolen. Riven's face changed. Slowly. Who took it? He asked. The first skull opened its jaws. A sound emerged, not a howl, but the beginning of one, broken before it could rise. Soren moved fast. He threw the bowl of crushed pine, iron dust, and moon salt into the reliquary. The mixture struck the floor before Amara and burst into white smoke. The skulls screamed. Amara staggered as pain tore through her throat and lungs. Not from scent, exactly. From its absence being touched. The smoke wrapped around her like hands, searching for something that had been cut out. Her knees hit the stone. Riven lunged toward her. Soren shouted, "Do not touch her." Riven froze for half a breath. Half a breath was enough for Amara to feel the old loneliness sharpen. Even now, with skulls chanting an erased name and stones cracking open under her feet, the Alpha King hesitated when told she was dangerous. Then his face hardened. He stepped through the smoke and caught her before she fell fully. The court gasped. The moment his hand closed around her arm, every skull in the reliquary snapped its jaws shut. Silence struck. Amara looked up at him through watering eyes. Riven's grip was firm, warm, and too careful for the monster they claimed she was. "Can you breathe?" She should have said yes. Pride wanted yes. The smoke burned through her chest. "No," she whispered. His eyes darkened. Something moved under his skin then. Not a full shift, not a wolf breaking free, but a shadow of one pressing against his bones. A low growl rolled from him, so deep the reliquary stones trembled. Soren's face tightened with alarm. "Your Majesty, her blood is waking forbidden memory in your wolf." Riven did not look away from Amara. Good. The word shocked the court. It shocked Amara more. The smoke thinned around them. Where Riven's hand touched her arm, silver light spread beneath her skin in thin lines, not like a claim, not like a mate mark, but like an old path remembering moonlight. The first skull turned toward him, then toward her. Its empty eyes flared. A vision opened across the curved reliquary wall. A newborn girl lay on a stone altar beneath the first skull. No, not an altar, a naming slab. Around her stood oathkeepers in white fur. One of them was young Soren, his face unlined but unmistakable. Beside him stood a former Alpha King wearing the Blackthorn crown. The baby cried. The skulls howled in answer. Young Soren bent over her with a silver blade shaped like a wolf's tooth. "The First Howl line cannot remain scented," he said. "If she is tracked by the bones, every forged oath wakes." The former king looked down at the infant. "Will she live?" "Yes," Soren answered. "But no wolf will know where to love her." The blade touched the baby's chest. Amara screamed as the memory tore through her. Riven's arm tightened around her. The vision shattered. The entire court stared at Soren. The high oathkeeper stood pale and rigid beneath the arch. Then the first skull spoke in a voice made of hundreds of dead wolves. "Return what you sealed. Return what you sealed." The first skull's voice rolled through the reliquary like thunder trapped in bone. Every wolf skull along the walls repeated it in pieces, some whispering, some growling, some speaking with voices so old they sounded like winter wind moving through graves. "Return." "What?" "You." Sealed. High Oathkeeper Soren stood at the threshold with the court behind him and all the dead before him. For the first time since Amara had known him, his holiness looked thin, not broken, not yet, but strained, like white cloth pulled over a blade. Amara knelt inside Riven's hold, one hand pressed to her chest where the vision had cut through her. The memory of the silver wolf-tooth blade still burned beneath her ribs, a newborn girl on a naming slab, young Soren bending over her, the former Alpha King asking if she would live. No wolf will know where to love her. That sentence hurt worse than the blade. Riven helped her stand. He did not lift her as if she were helpless. He steadied her until her legs remembered pride. Then he released her slowly, though his body remained close enough that Soren's eyes narrowed. "Return it," Riven said. Soren's mouth tightened. "Your Majesty, old bone commands should not be obeyed without understanding the cost. You understood the cost when you took it from an infant." Soren looked toward the nobles. What you saw was a memory twisted by forbidden blood. The First Howl line was dangerous. It did not unite wolves, it unsettled them. It made old packs remember grievances better left buried. The oath stone flared. A new line carved itself beneath the others. Memory is not rebellion. Amara stared at the words. Something moved through her then. Not scent, not power exactly. A recognition that the bones were not giving her a throne or a weapon. They were giving her the thing she had been denied all her life. The right to be remembered correctly. Soren saw her understand. His hand moved toward the chain of oath beads at his wrist. Riven growled, "Do not." Soren froze. The Alpha King's wolf pushed close enough to his skin that his gold-gray eyes flashed silver. The skulls watched him with terrible interest. Soren lowered his hand. "If I return her scent, every ancient skull in this chamber may wake. Every forgotten grievance, every broken pack vow, every oath sealed for peace." "For power," Amara said. Her voice was not loud, but the reliquary carried it. Soren's eyes cut to her. She took one step forward. The silver light at her feet followed, forming old wolf tracks around her ankles. "You keep calling silence peace, but silence never protected me. It only protected the people who needed me forgotten." A murmur moved through the court. Riven looked at her then, and Amara felt the danger of being seen after a lifetime of absence. His attention did not soften her pain. It sharpened the room around it. Soren lifted his chin. "And what do you think will happen if the dead remember you? The court will not love you. The packs will not welcome you. They will fear what you can awaken." Amara swallowed. Fear moved through her, honest and cold. Then the first skull spoke again. "Let the sealed one choose." The chamber went still. Riven turned toward her. Soren looked almost relieved, as if he expected her to refuse. Maybe she should have. A scent was not a simple thing in Ravengard. It was how wolves recognized blood, fear, desire, betrayal, belonging. To have it returned in front of the court would be to become readable to every wolf who had once called her nothing. Her grief would have a scent, her anger, her fear, perhaps even the dangerous pull she felt when Riven stood too near. But the alternative was remaining a blank space written by others. Amara looked at Riven. "If I choose this, and it wakes something your court cannot control?" His answer came without delay. "Then the court will learn fear is not law." She searched his face for pity. There was none. Only danger, conflict, and something like respect fighting its way through everything he had been raised to believe. Amara turned back to Soren. "Return it." Soren went pale. "You do not know what you ask." "No," she said. "I know exactly what was taken." The first skull opened its jaws. The silver oath chain that had snapped in part one lifted from the floor and flew toward Soren. It wrapped around his wrist before he could move, dragging him across the threshold into the reliquary. The court cried out. Soren fought the chain, but the ancient skulls opened their mouths, and the sound of 1,000 dead wolves pressed him to his knees. "Blood of Oathkeeper," the first skull said. "Hand of theft. Undo." Soren's face twisted. "I did it by royal command." The oath stone burned. A hidden image appeared on its black surface. The former Blackthorn king placing his hand over Soren's as the silver wolf, Toothblade, touched infant Amara. Riven went still, not shocked, wounded. "That was my father," he said. Soren bowed his head. He believed the throne would fall if the First Howl woke. Riven's voice became deadly quiet. "So he cut a child out of memory. He saved the kingdom from old wars." Amara looked at him. "He saved his oath from being questioned." The skulls snapped their jaws in approval. The silver chain forced Soren's hand upward. From beneath his robe, a small bone vial slid free, hanging from his neck on a hidden cord. Inside it swirled something colorless and bright, like breath trapped in moonlight. Amara's chest tightened. She knew before anyone spoke. Her scent, her first trace in the world. Soren closed his eyes. The first skull commanded, "Break it." His hand shook. Then the vial cracked. Moonlit breath rushed into the reliquary. It struck Amara like a storm. She gasped as scent flooded back into her body, rain on black pine, winter smoke, old milk, blood-warm fur, moonstone dust, and something ancient beneath all of it. The first note of a howl before any alpha named himself king. Every living wolf in the courtyard staggered. Riven took one step toward her, then stopped himself with visible effort. His eyes had changed, not because he suddenly loved her, because now he could smell what had been hidden. The skulls bowed. All of them. Even the first skull lowered its great bone head until its teeth touched the stone before Amara. Outside, nobles fell to their knees in terror. Soren stared up at her, shaking. Amara touched her throat, her chest, her own skin, overwhelmed by the impossible truth of being traceable at last. Then Riven whispered, almost to himself, "First rain, black pine, moon memory." Amara looked at him. His wolf had recognized her scent before his mind knew what it meant. The oathstone cracked open one final time. A deeper chamber appeared beneath it, filled with sealed scrolls wrapped in wolf hide. The first skull spoke. The forged alpha oaths sleep below. Soren lunged for the opening. Riven caught him by the throat before he reached it. The Alpha King's voice was soft, furious, and edged with wolf. "Now we find out why my father feared her name." The opening beneath the oathstone breathed cold air into the reliquary. Not the clean cold of winter, the buried cold of old lies. Riven held Soren by the throat with one hand, his claws half formed against the Oathkeeper's skin. The silver chain from the first skull still wrapped Soren's wrist, glowing brighter each time he tried to pull away. Beneath them, the hidden chamber waited, lined with wolf-hide scrolls that no living alpha had ever admitted existed. Amara stood above the opening with her scent newly returned to her body. It overwhelmed her in waves. The world had edges now. Every person in the courtyard carried proof of themselves. Fear sharp as iron, guilt sour as old wine, anger hot as blood, reverence like pine smoke. She could smell nobles who had smiled at her emptiness now choking on terror. She could smell Soren's panic beneath his ceremonial calm. She could smell Riven too, and that nearly undid her. Storm-dark wolf, cold stone, burned cedar, a crown held too tightly, loneliness buried under command. She looked away before the scent could become more dangerous than the court. The first skull spoke from behind her. The forged oaths must be read by the one whose scent was stolen. Soren's eyes widened. "No." Riven's grip tightened. "Why?" "Because those oaths hold the kingdom together. Then they should not fear being read." Soren laughed once, breathless under the king's hand. "You think truth strengthens thrones because you have never watched old packs tear each other apart over memory." Amara stepped closer. "Memory did not tear them apart. The people who forged it did." The skulls hissed in approval. Riven released Soren, only to throw him to his knees beside the opening. "You will descend first." Soren's face went gray. "The chamber will not open to me." "Then crawl until it rejects you." Amara moved before he could force the Oathkeeper down. "No." Riven turned to her. His expression remained hard, but the wolf behind his eyes paused for her voice. That was new. Not obedience. Not yet. But restraint. "The skull said I must read them," she said. "It also said your scent was cut from you by men who called harm stability. And if you keep deciding danger for me, you are only using a gentler knife." The words struck him. The reliquary fell quiet. For a moment, Riven looked less like a king and more like a man hearing his own power named from the outside. His jaw flexed once. Then he stepped aside. Not far. Enough. Amara lowered herself into the hidden chamber. The stone steps were narrow and slick with frost. Silver light from the skulls followed her down, illuminating walls carved with old paw marks and names scratched out so violently the stone had cracked around them. At the bottom lay a round room filled with scrolls wrapped in black wolf hide. Each scroll was bound by a strand of scent thread, invisible to the eye but vivid to her now. Pine, blood, smoke, rain, ash, fear, royal musk, dead moonlight. Riven descended behind her. Soren was dragged after them by the oath chain, breath shaking. Amara approached the first scroll. Its scent struck her before her fingers touched it. False pine over old blood. She opened it. The scroll screamed. Above the chamber, a vision formed in silver light. A coronation hall generations ago. A young alpha kneeling before the first skull, trembling as ancient wolves watched. The skulls did not bow. They did not accept him. Behind the crowd, an oathkeeper quietly burned a strip of wolf hide and replaced the answer with silence. Silence meant acceptance. The vision shattered. Riven stared at the scroll. That was King Avar Blackthorn, my grandfather's father. Soren whispered. Amara opened another. Another vision. A Luna standing before the reliquary, demanding the skulls testify that her mate's oath had been forged. Guards dragged her away before the first skull could answer. Her scent was cut from the hall records by an oathkeeper wearing Soren's beads. Another scroll. A child with silver eyes hidden beneath a chapel floor because her name made the skulls howl. Another. A pack executed for refusing a king the wolves had never chosen. The chamber filled with witnesses. Riven stood motionless, each vision cutting into the foundation beneath his crown. His father's line, his grandfather's line, perhaps every Blackthorn reign he had been taught to honor, each one had been polished by silence purchased from the dead. Then Amara found a scroll bound in white scent thread. It smelled like her, not the returned scent she carried now, but the faint first breath of an infant before the world took it. Her hands shook. Riven noticed. Amara. She did not correct him. Not yet. She opened the scroll. The chamber vanished. The reliquary appeared 20 years earlier. Infant Amara lay on the naming slab beneath the first skull. Her small fists curled in moonlight. The skulls around her were awake, all of them, silver-eyed and silent with awe. Former Alpha King Dareth Blackthorn stood beside Soren. Younger Soren held the wolf-tooth blade. Dareth's face was pale with fear. Not hatred, fear. The skulls answered her before she cried. Dareth said. Soren nodded. First Howl blood. She will wake every oath. Yes. Dareth looked down at the baby. If she lives scented, Riven's claim dies before he is old enough to defend it. Amara's breath stopped. Riven made a sound behind her. The vision continued. Soren asked, Shall I kill her? Dareth closed his eyes. For one terrible breath, the whole chamber waited. No, the former king said. No child dies for my crown. Amara's chest twisted. Then Dareth opened his eyes again, and mercy curdled into something worse. Take her scent, take her name. Let her live where no wolf can love her, and no skull can find her. My son will inherit cleanly. Soren bent over the child. The blade touched her skin. The vision broke on the infant's silent scream. Amara staggered back. Riven caught her before she hit the stone wall. She should have pulled away. She did not have strength. His hands shook against her shoulders. My father, he said, voice raw, did that for me. Soren lifted his head from where the chain held him kneeling. He did it for the kingdom. Riven turned on him, eyes flashing wolf silver. Do not make cowardice sound noble. You sit on the throne because of that cowardice. The words landed like a thrown blade. Riven went still. Soren saw the wound open and press deeper. Every oath you have commanded, every border you have held, every enemy who feared your crown built on the silence you now condemn. If you restore her name, you do not only expose dead kings, you unmake yourself. Amara looked at Riven. There it was, the true trap, not whether she had a place in Ravengard, whether Riven would still choose truth when truth reached his own throne. The first skull's voice echoed down from above. Read the final oath. A stone drawer opened beneath the scroll shelves. Inside lay one black scroll wrapped in living silver scent thread. Riven stared at it. He knew before Amara did. His own coronation oath. Amara reached for it. Riven caught her wrist. Not hard, but stopping her. The chamber went silent. His face was torn between fear, shame, and the instinct to preserve the kingdom he had inherited. Amara looked down at his hand, then up at him. "Will you still call silence the law?" she asked. The question returned from the reliquary walls, sharper now. Riven let go. Amara opened the final oath. Silver light burst upward through the hidden chamber, through the first skull, through every ancient bone above. And in front of the entire court, Alpha King Riven Blackthorn's coronation began to replay. Alpha King Riven Blackthorn's coronation replayed in silver light. The hidden chamber vanished around them. For one breath, Amara stood inside a younger throne hall, beneath banners of black wolf fur and moonlit steel. Riven was there, younger by 5 years, kneeling shirtless before the first skull, with blood on his chest and a crown of wolfbone waiting beside him. He looked powerful even then, but not yet carved into the cold king she knew. His jaw was clenched. His eyes were bright with the effort not to show fear. Behind him stood his father, Alpha King Dareth, already ill, already hollowed by the price of old secrets. Soren stood at Riven's side with the black oath scroll in his hands. The court watched in reverent silence. The first skull waited. Young Riven lifted his head. "I offer blood, oath, and wolf. If the old bones find me false, let them refuse me." The words should have filled the hall with howls. Instead, the reliquary went silent, not accepting silence. Empty silence. The first skull did not lower its head. The ancient skulls did not glow. No ancestral memory answered. Amara felt present-day Riven beside her go rigid. In the vision, young Riven's face tightened. He had heard the difference too. Even then, he had known something was wrong. He looked up at Soren. "Why do they not answer?" Soren said softly, "Because kingship is heavier than approval, Your Highness." "Continue." Dareth stepped forward, face pale. "Seal it." Soren opened a hidden vial and poured something colorless over the black oath scroll. Amara recognized it before the vision named it. Hestonsint. The scent taken from her infant body, kept in a bone vial, poured across Riven's coronation oath like ink. The skulls screamed. "Not allowed." Inside the stone, young Riven flinched, one hand flying to his chest, as if some invisible claw had entered him. Zoran began to chant. "The first howl consents through silence. The blackthorn blood is chosen. The oath is whole." The scroll burned silver. The first skull's jaws were forced shut by a chain of light. A false answer passed through the hall. The court fell to its knees. Young Riven was crowned. The vision shattered. Amara returned to the hidden chamber, with the black scroll burning in her hands. Riven stood before her, face stripped of every defense. "My oath," he said. His voice was almost unrecognizable. Not weak, wounded in a place kings rarely let anyone see. Soren lifted his head from the floor. "Your father saved you from humiliation before the court." The skulls would not answer because the first howl line had awakened. Her blood confused the bones. Dareth did what any father would do. "No," Riven said. The single word silenced even the skulls. "My father used a stolen child's scent to force dead wolves to crown me." Soren's mouth hardened, and without that crown, every rival house would have torn Ravengard apart. Amara looked at Riven. He did not look away from the scroll. She understood the shape of his pain. It was not only shame, it was fear that every command he had ever given might have been standing on stolen ground. Every border defended, every law signed, every execution ordered, every mercy granted. All of it suddenly leaned over an open grave. Above them, the court began shouting. The replay had risen through the reliquary floor. The nobles had seen everything: the stolen scent, the forced oath, the chain sealing the first skull's jaws, the crowning of a king the bones had never chosen. Panic spread faster than fire. "False oath! Impossible. The skulls were corrupted." The scentless girl cursed the coronation. Soren smiled faintly through blood on his lip. "Hear them, Your Majesty. They will not accept a throne unmade by a girl who had no scent an hour ago." Riven slowly turned toward him. "What happens if the oath is broken?" Soren's smile faded. The first skull answered from above. "The throne remembers every false command." The chamber shook. Riven closed his eyes once. When he opened them, they were silver gray with wolf light. "Then let it remember." Soren lunged forward despite the chain. "No!" Riven reached for the black scroll in Amara's hands. She stepped back. His gaze snapped to hers. Not angry. Stopped. She held the scroll against her chest. This was made with what they took from me. Riven's face changed. He had reached for the oath as king. Now he looked at it as theft. You are right, he said quietly. That quiet did more to unsettle her than command would have. What do you want done with it? He asked. The chamber went still. Amara heard the court above, heard fear, anger, disbelief, heard the ancient skulls waiting, heard her own returned scent filling her lungs with things she still did not know how to carry. For years, she had wanted only to exist without being erased. Now the king was asking, what justice should touch first? She looked at the scroll. Read it. Riven's jaw tightened. It will break my claim in public. Yes. If my claim breaks, houses may rise before dawn. Yes. And if I refuse? Amara met his eyes. Then you prove they chose correctly when they stole from me. The words struck him hard. For one breath, something like grief crossed his face. Then Riven stepped back and bowed his head. Not to her, to the truth in her hands. Read it, he said. Amara opened the black scroll fully. The scent thread snapped. Silver fire rose through the hidden chamber, through the reliquary, through the courtyard, and into the winter sky. The forced coronation oath appeared above every head in Ravengard's court. The First Howl did not consent. The Blackthorn oath was sealed with stolen scent. The living heir Amarin was erased to crown Riven Blackthorn. The courtyard fell silent. Riven ascended the chamber steps slowly, Amara beside him, the scroll burning between them. When he emerged into the reliquary, every skull turned toward him. The first skull opened its jaws. Will the false crowned king return the name? Soren screamed from below. If you answer, you lose everything. Riven looked at the court, then at Amara. No, he said. I lose what was never mine to keep. He took the wolf-bone crown from his head. The court gasped. Riven placed it on the black stone floor before Amara's bare feet. Then he stepped back. The name was stolen from Amarin, he said. Let Ravengard hear it returned. Every skull in the Wolf Reliquary opened its mouth. This time, the howl that rose was not broken. It was the first sound before kings, before forged oaths, before silence became law. Amara's true name tore through the court like moonlight through a sealed grave. Emerine Vale. The living oath book outside the reliquary burst open by itself, and every erased page began to write her back. The living oath book wrote her name in silver. Not ink, not blood, memory. Amarin Vale burned across the open pages outside the Wolf Reliquary, and every wolf in the courtyard felt the name enter the air like a scent returning after a long winter. Nobles staggered, as if the word had teeth. Guards who had aimed spears toward the reliquary lowered them without knowing why. Somewhere near the back of the crowd, an old she-wolf began to weep. Amara stood barefoot before the first skull with Riven's wolfbone crown lying on the black stone at her feet. No, not Amara. Amarin. The name did not feel like a costume placed over her. It felt like a door opening behind her ribs. She could still feel Amara inside it, the girl who had scrubbed corridors, swallowed insults, walked scentless through a kingdom that had trained itself not to notice her. But Amarin was older. Not more powerful exactly, more remembered. The skulls continued howling her name. Every note struck the living oath book. Pages turned violently. Names appeared and vanished. Old pack lines, broken Luna vows, alpha claims sealed by silence. Scent records scratched out and rewritten by oath keepers who had made disappearance into policy. The book did not only restore her, it began to restore everything near her wound. Soren was dragged up from the hidden chamber by the silver oath chain, his ash-white robes torn, his face stripped of holy calm. He saw the book turning and lunged toward it with a strangled sound. Riven caught him before he reached the pages. This time, the Alpha King did not grab him by the throat. He caught him by the wrist and twisted his hand open before the court. A hidden oath mark burned in Soren's palm. Black, not silver. The first skull hissed. Riven looked at the mark. What is that? Soren tried to close his fist. The silver chain tightened until bone cracked softly beneath skin. Amarin smelled his terror now. Bitter iron. Old ash. panic buried under discipline. She stepped closer. It is not an oath to Ravengard. Soren's eyes flashed toward her. Too late. The living oath book turned to a black-edged page. A line wrote itself. High Oathkeeper Soren bound his hand to the silent crown before he bound his voice to the wolves. The courtyard chilled. Riven's gaze sharpened. The silent crown? The skulls went still. That stillness frightened Amarin more than their howling. Soren's face changed then. Fear gave way to anger, and anger gave way to something colder, conviction. You think the first howl was pure? You think memory itself is mercy? The old wolves did not only remember injustice, they remembered every hunger, every grievance, every blood feud. The silent crown was made because the first howl would have drowned the kingdom in ancient rage. The silent crown was destroyed, one old noble whispered. Soren looked at him with contempt. No, it was hidden where kings were wise enough not to ask. Riven's jaw tightened. And my father knew? Soren said nothing. The oath book answered. Dareth Blackthorn wore silence beneath his crown. Riven went still. Amarin looked at him, and for one breath she saw how much truth a man could carry before it started to look like punishment. His father had stolen her scent. His coronation had used it. His crown had rested over a hidden silence older than his reign. Every answer opened another wound beneath his throne. Soren saw that too. You can still stop this, he said to Riven. Close the book. Return the crown to your head. Name her a relic. Corrupted witness, not a restored heir. The court will accept it, because the court wants to survive. Riven looked down at the wolfbone crown on the floor. The courtyard waited. Amarin did not speak. She would not beg a king to choose truth. That had to be his wound, not her labor. Riven bent. For one terrible moment, every noble inhaled. Then he picked up the wolfbone crown and placed it not on his head, but into Amarin's hands. The weight startled her. It was cold, heavier than it looked. Its bone points carried the scent of old blood, winter fur, and command repeated for generations until no one remembered who first questioned it. Riven released it slowly. If this was sealed with what they stole from you, then it cannot sit on my head until you decide what witness demands. A murmur broke through the court. Soren stared at him as if he had gone mad. Amarin looked at the crown in her hands. Every part of her wanted to throw it away, to shatter it against the floor, to make the whole court watch its holy object break like any other stolen thing. But the skulls waited. The living oath book waited. And Riven waited, without reaching for what had once made him king. She placed the crown before the first skull. Show what silence crowned. The reliquary shook. The wolfbone crown cracked along its inner rim. Inside it, hidden under layers of carved prayer, was a strip of black metal shaped like a thin circlet. The silent crown. It unfolded from the wolfbone like a shadow leaving a body. Every torch in the courtyard went out. The skull's silver eyes dimmed. Then the silent crown rose into the air and spoke without sound. The silence hit the court like drowning. Amarin clutched her throat. For one breath, her returned scent vanished. The world went blank again. No pine, no fear, no Riven, no self, only emptiness. She nearly fell. Riven caught her from behind. This time, when his hands steadied her, his wolf answered her absence with a snarl so violent the black stones split beneath his boots. The silent crown turned toward him. A voice entered the chamber without being heard. A king is easiest to keep when he fears what he remembers. Riven's face hardened. Soren sank to his knees, not forced this time, but reverent. It kept the peace. Amarin forced air into her lungs. Her scent returned in a sharp rush, wounded but alive. No, she whispered. It kept the throne comfortable. The first skull opened its jaws. The living oath book turned to its oldest page. And there, beneath the first law of Ravengard, a line appeared that no one living had ever read. No alpha may be chosen while the first howl is silenced. The silent crown cracked. Riven's wolf rose behind him in shadow and silver light, huge and furious, not kneeling, not attacking, but staring at the crown as if it had finally found the thing that had been pressing on its throat since birth. Then every skull in the reliquary turned toward the Alpha King, not to reject him, to ask. Riven looked at Amarin. What does witness demand? She held his gaze through the silver dark. Not your death, she said. Your answer. The silent crown lowered toward his head. Soren smiled through tears. Wear it, he whispered. Save the kingdom. Riven reached up. For one heartbeat, his fingers touched the black circlet. Then he closed his fist around it and crushed it in his hand. Silence shattered. Every wolf in Ravengard howled. Every wolf in Ravengard howled. The sound did not come only from the courtyard. It came from the towers, the kennels, the outer walls, the winter forest beyond the palace, from sleeping children who woke with silver in their eyes, from old wolves who had not shifted in years, from warriors on distant patrol roads who suddenly dropped to one knee without knowing why. The silent crown broke in Riven's fist. Black shards fell between his fingers like dead teeth. For one breath, nothing else moved. Then the Wolf Reliquary screamed awake. Every skull opened its jaws. Silver light poured from their empty eyes in rivers. The living oath book tore through its pages so violently the iron stand beneath it cracked. Names, oaths, scent lines, pack vows, erased claims, false coronations, hidden Luna bonds, all of it rose into the air at once. The court staggered beneath the weight of memory. Amara nearly fell with them. Her returned scent exploded outward. No longer fragile, no longer only hers. Rain on black pine, moonstone dust, winter smoke, first howl before crowns. It filled the reliquary and struck every living wolf like a question they had spent generations avoiding. Who chose your king? Who wrote your oath? Who taught you silence meant law? Riven stood at the center of it all, blood dripping from the hand that had crushed the crown. His wolf shadow towered behind him, huge and silver black, its jaws open in a soundless snarl. Without the silent crown pressing on it, his wolf looked less like a beast under command and more like something that had been imprisoned inside royal skin. Soren stared up at him, horror and devotion warring on his face. You do not understand what you have done, the Oathkeeper whispered. Riven looked down at the black shards in his palm. I understand enough. No. Soren rose unsteadily, the silver oath chain still biting his wrist. The silent crown did not only hide lies, it held back every oath the dead refused to release. Every pack your ancestors conquered, every Luna whose claim was denied, every Alpha whose bloodline was buried. You have opened all of them. The living oath book answered. 100 pages lifted into the air and burned silver. Across them appeared names. Not one, dozens, hundreds. Packs absorbed under Blackthorn rule, heirs renamed as wards. Luna bonds declared barren when they had not been. Ancient skull testimony sealed before it could be heard. Every crime hidden beneath Ravengard's clean oath law began to breathe again. Nobles shouted in panic. Some tried to flee. The reliquary doors slammed shut. Not by Riven's command, by the skulls. The first skull turned toward Amaran. Witness must choose what memory becomes. Her chest tightened. There it was again. Choice offered like a crown, but heavy as a grave. Amaran looked at the pages burning in the air. Each one carried a wound. Each wound could become war. If every pack demanded repayment before dawn, Ravengard would bleed from the inside out. If she silenced them again, she would become another Oathkeeper with a gentler face. Riven saw the question cross her face. He stepped closer, but did not touch her. This should not be placed on you alone. It was placed on me when they cut my scent out. His jaw tightened. I know. No, she said, softer. You know now. I have known by absence my whole life. The words hurt him. She saw that. Good. Not because she wanted cruelty, but because a king who could not be hurt by truth would only turn it into policy. Soren seized the moment. Then end it. Put the silence back. Let the girl keep her scent. Let the court restore her name quietly, and let the kingdom survive. Amaran turned to him. Quietly? His eyes shone with feverish conviction. Public truth destroys more than guilt. It destroys children born from false oaths, mates bonded under altered records, soldiers sworn to crowns they now doubt. Mercy sometimes requires burial. The worst part was that he was not entirely wrong. A forged oath could be a crime and still have living people built on top of it. Children, homes, years of loyalty given in ignorance. Truth was not clean simply because lies were dirty. Riven looked at the floating pages, then at the court, then at Amaran. "What does witness demand?" he asked again. This time, the question did not sound like a king seeking absolution. It sounded like a man placing his crownless head beneath the same blade. Amarin closed her eyes. For one breath, she listened beyond the shouting, beyond the skulls, beyond the old pages screaming to be read. Under all of it was the first howl. Not rage, not vengeance. Memory before command. She opened her eyes. "Not all wounds become law tonight," she said. The reliquary stilled. The first skull listened. Amarin lifted her voice. "Every forged oath will be recorded. Every erased name will be restored. Every skull testimony will be opened before the living packs it concerns. But no child born under a false oath will be stripped of name. No mate bonded in ignorance will be shamed for another's fraud. No pack will be punished for a lie it was forced to inherit." The pages trembled. Soren stared at her. He had expected revenge. That made her steadier. She looked at him. "But every hand that sealed the lie will answer." The silver chain around Soren's wrist tightened. His face went white. The oath book turned to a page blackened by ash. "High Oathkeeper Soren, keeper of sealed scent, witness to erased First Howl, living hand of the silent crown." Soren closed his eyes. Riven's voice was cold. "Who else?" The book began writing. Names appeared in silver fire across the air. Oathkeepers, council elders, former royal guards, noble houses that paid to have skull testimony buried, priests who cut scent lines from living children. Some were dead. Some stood trembling in the courtyard. Then one name appeared larger than the rest. Alpha King Dareth Blackthorn. Riven did not flinch. That was worse than flinching. He stepped forward and bowed his head before the first skull. "My father is dead. His crimes are not. Let them be read." The court gasped. The skulls lowered slightly, not in worship, but acknowledgement. The first skull spoke. "And your oath?" Riven looked at the black scroll of his coronation, lying open near Amarin's feet. "My oath was forged." Soren whispered, "Do not." Riven ignored him. "My crown was forced. My rule was built on stolen scent. Until the wolves answer freely, I am not chosen." The words shattered what remained of the court's composure. Some nobles shouted for order. Some fell to their knees. Some looked at Amarin with hatred, as if she had personally taken the certainty from under their feet. But others, servants, guards, lesser wolves who had spent their lives under laws they never wrote, looked at her, as if air had entered a sealed room. Riven turned to the first skull. "How is an oath remade?" The skull's silver eyes burned. "Not by king alone." Every skull turned toward Amarin. Her breath caught. Riven did not reach for her. He did not ask her to save his throne. He only stood crownless, bleeding, and waited. The first skull spoke. "The first howl must be given freely by the one whose name was erased." Soren laughed, broken and desperate. "There! Do you hear it? She must crown you, or you are nothing. The throne still needs her body." Amarin looked at Riven. His face had gone still. Then he shook his head once. "No." The first skull's eyes narrowed. Riven stepped back from Amarin. "If the oath requires her to give what was stolen from her, then I refuse the oath." The reliquary went silent. Even Soren stopped breathing. Riven's voice carried through the bone chamber and into the courtyard beyond. "I will not build a second crown from her consent just because the first was built from her scent." Amarin felt the words strike a place in her that had been empty for too long. The first skull opened its jaws. For one terrible moment, she thought it would reject him. Instead, the ancient wolf skull bowed. "Then the false-crowned king has spoken his first true oath." The false-crowned king has spoken his first true oath. The words moved through the wolf reliquary like moonlight through water. No one cheered. Truth, that deep, did not invite cheering. It removed the floor beneath every comfortable lie and left the living trying to remember how to stand. Riven Blackthorn remained before the first skull with blood on his hand, no crown on his head, and every ancient bone in the chamber turned toward him as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Amarin could not look away from him. He had refused the easiest salvation. The reliquary had offered him a path back to power through her consent, and he had rejected it because it smelled too much like the theft that made him king. She had spent her life being used as absence. Now he had refused to use even her presence without care. That did not heal everything. It mattered anyway. Soren looked as if the skulls had struck him. "No," he whispered. "No, that is not how oaths hold kingdoms." The first skull turned toward him. "No, that is how lies do." The living oath book snapped open again. Its pages turned until they reached a blank sheet near the center, one that should not have existed in a book older than Ravengard's first walls. Silver light bled from the page, waiting. Riven looked at it. "What is that?" Amarin knew before the skull answered. "A new oath," she said. The first skull lowered its great head. Not crowned, witnessed. A tremor went through the court. The difference was small enough for cowards to pretend not to understand, and large enough to break every false law in the chamber. A crowned oath asked the old wolves to approve one man. A witnessed oath asked the living to remember what power must answer to. Riven turned to Amarin. "This cannot be yours to bear alone." "It is not," she said. Then she faced the court. Her returned scent filled her lungs, still new, still overwhelming. She could smell anger from the noble houses, terror from oathkeepers, grief from servants who had just learned their family lines might have been rewritten generations ago. She could smell Riven's pain, sharp as cedar smoke, and beneath it something steadier. Restraint. He wanted the oath. Not for pride now, for the kingdom shaking around them. But he would not reach through her to take it. Amarine lifted her voice. "Every pack whose oath was sealed will send one witness before the next moon. Every erased name will be restored before any new crown is forged. Every living child born under a false oath keeps their name. Every guilty hand that cut scent, burned skull testimony, or silenced the first howl will stand before the reliquary." Soren laughed, but it broke in the middle. "You think Pax will accept that? You think old enemies will wait politely while scrolls are read?" "No," Amarin said. "I think they will rage. I think some will demand blood. I think some will lie again if given the chance." She looked at Riven. "And I think a king who wants to rule after silence breaks must learn to stand in noise." Riven bowed his head once. "Then I will." The living oath book wrote the words. Not as coronation, as promise. Riven stepped to the blank page and cut his already bleeding palm deeper with a claw. Gold-red blood fell onto the book. The page did not blaze. It did not crown him. It simply held the blood and waited. The first skull turned to Amarin. "First Howl witness." The chamber tightened around her. Riven's jaw clenched. She owes no blood. The skulls did not answer him. Amarin understood why. This was not about giving herself to his oath. It was about stating the boundary the old law had never allowed her to speak. She stepped forward. Riven's hand moved once, then stopped before it reached her. She saw the effort. She appreciated it more than a rescue. Amarin pressed 2 fingers not to the cut on her palm, but to her throat, where her scent had once been severed from the world. Silver light gathered there. It did not hurt this time. It felt like touching a scar and finding it no longer open. "My name is Amarin Vale," she said. "My scent was stolen. My bloodline was erased. My memory was used to crown a king without consent. I do not give myself to the throne." The oath book wrote every word. The skulls lowered. "I give witness," she continued, voice shaking now, but not breaking. "And witness may refuse." The page flared silver. Above them, the broken shards of the silent crown dissolved into ash. Soren screamed as the oath chain around his wrist burned black, then silver, then clear, not releasing him. Rewriting the purpose of the chain. No longer keeper. Prisoner. The chain dragged him before the first skull. The ancient voice spoke. "High Oathkeeper Soren, living hand of silence, name the first erased oath." Soren trembled. For one breath, Amarin thought he would refuse. Then the chain tightened, and his holiness collapsed into a hoarse whisper. The first howl did not choose Riven Blackthorn. The court gasped. A page turned. Soren choked. It chose Leora of the Rain Pack. Another page turned. The skulls began to chant Leora's name. Then another. King Meron's Luna was not barren. Her child was hidden. Another page. 3 northern packs did not break oath. Their testimony was burned. Another. The Blackthorn crown was sealed with stolen scent 7 times before Riven. The words struck the court, like falling stones. Riven remained still through all of them, not untouched. Still, Amarin watched him accept each truth without trying to argue himself smaller than the damage. That was its own kind of strength, and it frightened her because she wanted to trust it. Soren sagged beneath the chain, sweating, shaking, forced to become the mouth of every silence he had guarded. At last, the first skull turned back to Riven. "Do you still ask to rule?" Riven looked at Amarin first. Not for permission, for honesty. Then he looked at the skull. "No," he said. The court erupted. Riven lifted one bloodied hand, and the sound died. "I ask to answer," he said. "If Ravengard chooses me after the oaths are opened, I will rule under witness. If it does not, I will step down without sealing one more mouth." The living oath book blazed. The first skull opened its jaws. A howl rose, not crowning, not rejecting, but carrying the oath outward beyond the reliquary walls. Across Ravengard, every sealed oath bell began to ring. Amarin felt the sound through her returned scent. Far packs waking, hidden names stirring, wolves looking toward the palace, not in obedience, but in demand. The reliquary doors opened. Dawn had not come yet, but the eastern sky had paled. Riven turned to Amarin. "You can leave before they arrive." She looked at the open doors, at the court that had wanted her erased, at the skulls that had given her name back, at the king who stood crownless because her stolen scent had once made him powerful. "I know," she said. "Do you want to?" The question was quiet. No command. No leash. No throne hidden inside it. Amarin breathed in the world with her own scent for the first time and realized the answer was not simple. So she gave the only honest one. "Not yet." Above them, the first skull whispered her true name once more. And this time, the living oath book did not shake. It held. Before dawn, the first packs arrived at the palace gates. They did not come as armies. That made them more frightening. They came in traveling cloaks, hunting leathers, widow black, old war colors hidden beneath plain wool. They came with children still half asleep in their arms and elders leaning on carved walking staffs. They came from border roads, pine villages, river dens, ash farms, and mountain holds whose names had been written smaller in Ravengard's records, every generation, until the court could pretend they did not matter. Every one of them had heard the oath bells ring. Every one of them had come to ask why. Amarin stood at the top of the reliquary steps as the gates opened. Her white trial dress was stained with dust and silver light. Her throat still ached where scent had once been cut from her. The returned world pressed against her senses until she could barely breathe. Fear, rain, soaked fur, old grief, hot anger, milk on a child's cheek, iron from sword hilts, smoke from torches. And underneath all of it, the wild, trembling note of wolves remembering they had been lied to. Riven stood several steps away, crownless. He had not moved closer without asking since the reliquary opened. That restraint followed her like warmth she did not know whether to trust yet. Soren knelt below the first skull, bound by the rewritten oath chain. He looked older than he had hours ago. Each time a new pack witness entered, the chain forced him to speak one erased truth from the living oath book. Some truths were small. A child renamed to protect a noble inheritance. Aluna's testimony hidden because it embarrassed a king. A border pack punished for refusing to swear under a forged scent. Some truths were not small. By the time the eastern sky turned silver, 3 noble houses had lost the right to speak in council. 2 oath keepers had been dragged forward by their own scent marks. One elderly woman from the Rain Pack collapsed weeping when the first skull confirmed that her grandmother's line had once been chosen before the Blackthorns. Through it all, Riven did not defend his throne. He answered for it. That was different. When the final witness before sunrise stepped forward, the courtyard went still. She was a little girl, perhaps 7 years old, with dark braids and a strip of gray cloth tied around her wrist. Her mother held her shoulders, but the child's eyes were fixed on Amarin. "She has no scent," the mother said, voice shaking. "The village healer told us to hide her before the king's men found out." The words struck Amarin so hard she almost stepped backward. Riven's face changed. Soren bowed his head. The little girl looked ashamed of existing. Amarin knew that posture. She had worn it like skin. She descended the steps slowly and knelt before the child, so they were eye to eye. The court watched. The packs watched. The skulls watched. "What is your name?" Amarin asked. The girl whispered, "Mira." Amarin held out her hand, palm up. "May I?" Mira looked at her mother. Her mother nodded through tears. The child placed her small hand in Amarin's. Nothing dramatic happened at first. No skulls screamed. No oath book burst open. No crown cracked. Only a scent, faint as moonlight under snow, stirred around the child. Hidden rain, buried pine. A howl folded so tightly inside silence, it had almost forgotten its own shape. Amarin's throat burned with fury. Not wild fury, clean fury. "How many?" she asked without looking away from Mira. Soren's chain tightened. They gasped. The living oath book turned page after page, faster and faster, until silver light spilled over the courtyard stones. The first skull answered. 47 living children carry sealed scent. The courtyard erupted. Mothers clutched daughters. Fathers shouted. Guards looked at one another with horror. The noble houses tried to speak, but the sound of the wolves drowned them out. Riven stepped forward at last. Not toward Amarin, toward the crowd. "Bring every sealed child to the reliquary," he said. "No guard will touch them. No oath keeper will stand over them. Their families choose whether they enter. Their names will not be cut from any living book again." A lord shouted, "You cannot let hidden First Howl blood spread unchecked." Riven turned to him. The Alpha King had no crown, but the silence that followed him was sharper than any coronation. "I have seen what your version of control costs." The lord lowered his eyes. Mira's hand tightened around Amarin's. "You were like me?" the child whispered. Amarin's chest ached. "Yes." "Did it stop hurting?" She looked at the little girl, then at the skulls, then at the living oath book still writing names the kingdom had tried to erase. "No," Amarin said gently. "But it stopped being only mine." Mira nodded, as if that was answer enough. By sunrise, the first skull had restored 7 children's scent. Not all. Some families were too frightened. Some children were too young. Some needed time. For the first time in Ravengard's history, time was allowed. Soren was not executed. Amarin had thought she might want his death. Perhaps some part of her still did. But the first skull had asked what witness demanded, not what pain desired. So Soren was sentenced to live beneath the reliquary as the mouth of the restored records. Every dawn, he would speak an erased name. Every dusk, he would confess one sealed oath. If he lied, the skulls would take his voice and give it to the living oath book. When the sentence was spoken, Soren looked at Amarin. "You will regret mercy." She looked back at him. "This is not mercy. It is memory with teeth." The skulls approved with a low, silver growl. At last, Riven stood before the gathered packs, the broken silent crown's ashes scattered at his feet and the wolfbone crown still resting untouched before the first skull. "I was crowned by a forged oath," he said. "My father stole scent to secure my claim. My reign carried that theft whether I knew it or not. I will not ask the old wolves to pretend otherwise." The courtyard held its breath. "If Ravengard chooses me after every oath is opened, I will rule under witness. If it does not, I will step down," a noblewoman cried. "And until then?" Riven looked toward Amarin. Not to ask her to crown him, not to ask her to save him, only to acknowledge the person his throne had been built over. "Until then," he said, "I answer." The living oath book wrote the word in silver. Answer. Not king. Not exile. Not chosen. Answer. It was not a triumph. It was a beginning. Later, when the courtyard had thinned and the restored children slept under blankets beside their families, Amarin returned alone to the reliquary. The skulls were quiet now, their silver eyes dimmed to embers. The first skull watched her from the center of the chamber. Riven found her there but stopped at the threshold. "You may enter," she said without turning. He stepped inside. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them was different now. Not the old silence that had erased her. This one had room inside it. "I do not know how to ask forgiveness for being crowned by what was taken from you," Riven said. "You cannot ask it cleanly. I know. And I cannot give it quickly. I know that too." She looked at him then. He stood without crown, without command, with his wounded hand wrapped in cloth and his wolf quiet beneath his skin. He looked exhausted. He looked dangerous. He looked, For the first time, less like the law, and more like a man who had chosen to stand where law broke. "What do you want from me?" she asked. His answer came after a long breath. "Nothing you do not choose." The words were simple. That made them harder to doubt. Amren looked back at the first skull. "I am not staying to protect your throne. I would not ask that. I am staying until the sealed children are named." Riven's voice lowered. "Then I will make the road safe for every family that comes. And after that, I may leave Ravengard." "Yes. And if I return?" He looked at her, as if the question hurt and healed at once. "Then I will be here," he said, "not waiting with a crown, just here." Outside, the first sunlight entered the reliquary through the cracked ceiling. It touched the skulls one by one, turning bone to pale gold, then silver, then white. The first skull opened its jaws. For the first time, its voice was almost gentle. "First Howl witness, your scent is your own." Amarin closed her eyes. She breathed in. Rain on black pine, winter smoke, moonstone dust, Riven's storm-dark wolf waiting at the edge of her choosing, children sleeping safely beyond the threshold, old lies breaking under new light. For the first time in her life, the world could find her. For the first time, that did not feel like a threat. She walked out of the Wolf Reliquary beside the crownless Alpha King as dawn broke over Ravengard, and behind them the skulls did not chant for war, vengeance, or a throne. They chanted every name the kingdom had tried to forget,